for this book that first awakened interest in a Linnell family association. The descendants of Robert Linnell hark back to 1638, when that Englishman stepped ashore at Scituate on Cape Cod and established a new family in New England. 350 years later, some 170 contemporary Linnells returned home to Cape Cod, but gathered at the Sheraton Hyannis, a hostelry far less forbidding than the rocky coast their 17th century progenitor had found nearby. For the 3 days of June 24th, 25th, 26th in 1988, these Linnells and their kin came to know each other and their roots. They visited cemeteries, rubbed gravestones, sought the haunts of their forebears, and photographed a quaint byway dubbed Linnell Road, or a bit of sand identified by the sign Linnell Landing, and a fancy restaurant bearing the name the Linnell House. They celebrated their diverse origins: Oregon, Wisconsin, Florida, and Massachusetts, among others. They reviewed their history of their clan who had gone to sea in ships or suffered the punitive prejudices of their day, or emigrated to the great western territories of New York and Ohio. With awards to nonagenarians, features and entertainment of music and kids' performances, Sunday worship, and a decision to assure an ongoing family association, these Linnells rediscovered their relationship.
You want us to sign it?
Check your name tag and your ticket. They're all in one packet. Right. Supposed to be, but then who knows? Okay. Mine are already inside here. What was the name? Oh, I don't know if they've come in or not. All right. I went to the music shop yesterday. All right. Hello. Good to see you.
It's good to know we're on the back.
Here, let me go over there and I'll help you.
I'll tell you, it was easy. Once we figured, the hard part was figuring out what to do.
I was guilty at that point.
Lead our arguments.
It was 3/4 full, and I was just worried about it. So we shipping back, or is that just
Folks would introduce yourselves. Okay. Speaking to the camera here.
Well, I'm John Elliott from Oregon. And my wife, Ladoska, is the Linnell, and she's the one that made the name card.
From my mother. Go ahead. Yeah. From Spring Lake Park, Minnesota. That's my granny. Newark Mills, Minnesota. She is my daughter. She is my granddaughter. Married to Robert Linnell. To
John.
But you're not John. You're what?
Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
Thomas Jefferson.
And where did he end up? Was he down in Henry County?
He was in Illinois. He was, I think, around Belvedere. Belvedere, Poplar Grove.
Okay, that's
And I came from Blackbird, Wisconsin.
Or Wisconsin folks.
Wisconsin. I used to live in Minnesota. But we moved to Wisconsin.
I associate Wisconsin and Minnesota as being fairly close together. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I'm sure that once you get up there, it's quite a distance.
Just across the border, you might say. And we used to be in Duluth, Minnesota. But we moved down to and that's where my mother and father and all in our family, 11 of us were born in Blackbird. He's taking pictures. Tell who you are.
Just tell me who you are and where you're from, and a little bit of connection.
I'm her sister, and I'm Townsend, Linnell Townsend, and I live in Wisconsin.
Impressed with his first North American Union 350th anniversary of the stepping upon the Cape Cod soils of Robert Linnell.
Very official sounding. Thank you.
Hi, Mom. My name is Mark Wynn, and I'm from Columbia, Maryland, and having a wonderful time and seeing good friends like Jane and the cousins and everybody else. So it's a good time.
Linnell Cowan from Portland, Maine.
My husband, Casper Frank Cowan.
All right. Thank you.
Also from Portland, Maine.
By coincidence.
Very great to do.
I'm originally from Hyannis. My maiden name is Linnell, so I'm responsible for bringing this guy down.
I did. That's a right idea.
Do you have any sound on that?
Sure do.
Great. Wow.
Get all of the enthusiasm.
This is the love VCR.
Okay.
This is the family. And you.
Say hi, Mom. Right.
Hi, Jeremiah.
How appropriate.
Wonderful to see you all here. We're grateful for your safe arrival, for your presence, and I will ask my husband, J.C., to invoke God's blessing upon this gathering and upon this meal.
Around these tables of kinship and friendship, of women and men, and girls and boys, of young and old. May our coming together be blessed, and our sharing of food be a time of joy. Let us all say amen.
Oh, smile, you're on what county is
Church I'm talking about burned down long before the Presbyterian one I lost. It was over off of Knoxville.
But his son Samuel moved to Arcadia. Our families in various parts of the country are so closely related. It's amazing.
I did already. So this is from the shelter. Yeah, the shelter. This is the first time I've ever seen it. You said, ever flown? I've never seen an ocean first here. I haven't seen it here. Yeah, right here.
I was going to go to
There's that fellow with a camera again.
At it again.
Gotta take a lot. Gotta be doing a lot there. And she's watering my garden. Not when his mouth is
It was really great. He watched and he laughed his head off. We had 11 great-grandchildren,
You know, they have some records of where things are buried, who's buried in that cemetery. It was a long
Do they reflect? No, he's got it now. It's too late.
No, it's available light, so reflections would just be off any of these lights.
They won't do no towing. They won't do no towing. Well, we're going
up and say, well, there's a stubborn streak there. And I don't know whether in my family that comes from the Linnell side or the Houston side. But I do know that it's there, and that our children have also inherited that characteristic. The idea of a reunion came quite a long time ago. During the period of time that I was writing the book and beginning to organize who you all are. At that time, I began to meet so many wonderful people, and so many of you thought that you were only a little segment of Linnell's off in New Hampshire or Maine or Wisconsin all by yourselves. I grew up thinking that too. I thought that there was only my father and Aunt Mary and my brother, and that we were all by ourselves, the Linnell group. And then I began to discover 44 years ago that we did have a contingent out in New Jersey that were second cousins, but we only got together with them once. So, you know, they were way out there and we were in Michigan, and we just didn't know each other. But I found you in writing the book, and some of you said you wanted to know each other too. In fact, some of you didn't know that you had neighbors just down the road from you who were also Linnells. So we began to think about, could we do this sometime? And the more we thought about it, the more we said, we must do it sometime, and we will do it now. The question about when and where came up, and it seemed so very appropriate that 350 years of Robert's having come to this country needed to be celebrated. So we began to plan for 350 years of Robert's coming to Situate in Massachusetts, and then moving on to Barnstable, as he did with the John Lothrop group when they moved in 1639 to Barnstable from Situate. So we came, and we were interested in finding out more about Robert. We wish we knew who Robert was, what he was like, and how he decided to come to this country. He was 54 years old, you remember, when he came, and that was, in those days, a rather older person. I don't consider that at all old at this point. But he was 54 years old, and he came at a time that brought him with John Lothrop's clan group of the parish from London to this country in a very puritanical time to celebrate their religious faith in the way they wanted to worship. It was not easy, because at that time John Lothrop and his group were very dogmatic about how they should celebrate their lives and under what kind of strictures they should in their society develop. But we'll hear more about that tonight when Dick tells us the story of our family group, David and Hannah, our family love story. Am I speaking already? Okay. It seemed appropriate that we would try to discover a little bit more about why we are here in this place and how we came to know about Cape Cod. We lived here, you know, for about 150 years as a Linnell clan before we began to move away from this location. I chose as my part in this program to describe to you how you are related to each other. I thought for a while about taking my descent charts that I hope you've seen in the other room and just rolling them across the floor and letting you find yourselves on those charts. You know, they would stretch from here halfway down the room. and it's fun to crawl around on your knees and begin to find your name. And if you have your glasses in the kind that I have of bifocals, it's not an easy thing to do. And I could see the pileup of Linnells, you know, here and there and everywhere, and I thought it could be an interesting experience, but that we might not come out to be friends at the end of the experience. So instead, I have printed for you, as I hope you have brought to your tables, your descent charts. If you have them, take them out. If you haven't any, I have 2 or 3 up here that we might be able to pass out. Do we have a table where there are none at all?
No, I do. Got to memorize
There's one more. Okay, that's all there are. But let me call your attention to the first page to start with. And you'll see that we are all descended from either Jonathan or John. Now, just for fun, everyone who has a number that starts with 117, a green tag, just raise your hands. 117s. All right, you'll see them mostly all over here on this side. Now, put your hands down, and all of you 118s, raise your hands. All right? And you will see that our seating for luncheon was according to the family pattern groups. Your seating for dinner tonight will be in area groups so that you'll begin to get to know the people who live in your same region of the country. Then you will next notice that on the next line there are 8 different names. Those 8 people are our ancestors in 8 major lineal lines. And I'm going to introduce you by those lines. Now you remember in the book that there was a Jonathan that we just couldn't place. We think that Jonathan was probably the son of Jonathan Jr., who was 1175, but we're not sure. And I do hope that sometime down through the years, someone's going to find out just where that Jonathan came from. But so far, we don't know. But you'll see that there are some whose cards are 11A, B1. That's that Jonathan, because we've lost him for 2 generations, A and B. Now, who are the 11A, B1s in this crowd? Put up your hands, all of you. And because of that, we have identified on the next sheet, page 1, all of you who have come from that generation and that Jonathan. Reading that list off, I'm going to ask these people to stand up. Those who are descended from Jonathan's son Thomas are Howard Quinn. The Chases will be with us tomorrow, are not here now. Howard lives, stand up Howard. Howard lives in Easton. Stay standing until we're all of you are up. Bob Linnell comes from California. Eric Linnell from Florida. Randa, their daughter from Massachusetts, Robert's daughter from Massachusetts. Mildred O'Neill and Carolyn Wills from the area here. Okay, they are all Thomas's descendants. Thank you for standing. That's that group. Then there's the Uriah Linnell group. Those are the children from Jonathan to Uriah and down through the history of our family. And I want to just pause briefly enough to say that Uriah was the reason for all of my work, because he appeared in upstate New York and is buried in the Pittsburgh Pioneer Burial Ground, just a couple of miles from Rochester, where we were living. And it was his wife, Thankful, whose gravestone appeared in our newspaper near Halloween in 1979 that began my involvement and interest in this family. Uriah and his children came to Pittsburgh. Then they dispersed. Joseph going to Adrian, Michigan, and his children on to Lafayette, to Kansas. And then during that time of the Dust Bowl and the troubles in Kansas, moving out of that area to the lush green of Oregon, where we have Paul Linnell Sr. and Darrell Linnell and Linnell Elliott still living. Our three from the far, far northwest. Thank you. Then we would go quickly on to realize that while that family moved clear across the country and became involved in the Northwest migration, that there were others who went to different regions. My own line came from Thomas, 1176, the second person on this first page, down through Elkanah and Joseph, who began the migration west from this family, for this family. After the Revolutionary War, there was an explosion of migrations all over the country, partially because the land by that time had become so divided into such small portions that a living was no longer possible unless they went to sea. And there it was possible in that early period of time. But the farmland was going, and they began to look for other parts of the country where this could happen. So Joseph, our Revolutionary War ancestor, moved first to Granville, Massachusetts, and then with the rest began to move to form Granville, Ohio. On page 2. And there you will find my family, but first Ruby Patel, the daughter of Margaret Boyd, and James Ferguson, our second cousins. Where are you, Margaret? And stand up. And my dear family, Mark, Martha, Marion, and their children, stand up, Elizabeth, Johnny, Rob, Emily, and Clark. 5 grandchildren. All right. And then my brother's family, Albert, where are you? All right. And Carol, Paul, Andrew, Barry, Scotty, and the children, Carol's 2 children, Eric and Becca Donner, and Andy's 3 children, David, Nathan, and Mariah. And Danny, has Danny gone upstairs or is he here? All right. And so here again are all of our family group that have gathered to celebrate with you too. Thank you. I just simply have to stop long enough to say that it's been great fun to see Jim Ferguson again. We haven't seen each other for 44 years. And this has brought us together after a reunion that celebrated a number of important family events 44 years ago the marriage of my brother and Jane Elliott, his graduation from Officer Candidate School at the time of the war, JC's graduation from seminary at Yale, and his ordination, and the Ferguson family brought us all together and saved all their ration stamps for 2 months to create a huge roast of beef. Can you imagine that at the wartime for us to celebrate with 44 years ago? Quickly on to page 3 of your genealogy, and you'll see that Elisha Linnell, 1177, began with his family to move north to Maine. At the time that others were moving west, this family went north. Samuel Linnell went to Standish, Maine, and this family became some of the most celebrated of the early guides in the McGalloway River location of northern Maine, northwestern Maine, and down through to the point where today is Dr. Larry Linnell and his family, Mariah, Jesse, Anna, and Rose. Great to see you all here for the first visit with all of us. Then another son of Elisha's, John, the next page, also went to Maine, to the Gorham, Otisfield, Oxford area. And through this line and the William Elder Fines Linnell line have come to us the Greenlaws, Ray, over here, and Oral Linnell, Rita Woodward, Anita Davies, Norman Kincaid, Jean Powers, Pauline Wilson, Brenda Johnson. All from this family, descendants of John Linnell from Elisha Linnell into this other area of Maine. We have 2 migrations to Maine now out of several. Going on quickly to look on page 5. For only a moment, you will see that Samuel Linnell of Barnstable had a son, Samuel Linnell, who moved to Belgrade, Maine, and his son, Joseph, well, first of all, it was Joseph who moved and up to that area of Belgrade, Maine, and bought 100 acres of land for $100 in those days. Wouldn't that be marvelous now? And while I'm not going to go farther on this particular page just now, put that aside and turn to page 8, if you will, for a few moments. Because it was Samuel's son, Sturgis, who remained in the area of Belgrade, Maine, and became the person who fathered a large generation or group of people in that area. Sturgis was promised the land and the house of grandfather Samuel if he would provide for him his living, which meant milking the cows, taking care of the raising of the grain, making sure that the family's garden was planted each year and harvested, because Samuel, too, was getting to be an old man in his later 50s. Rhoby Kidder, Sturgis's son, was said to be a very large man, between 6'6" and 7 feet tall. Not only was he a powerful farmer of the region, but he also was an itinerant minister. Can't you see him moving around on his horse? This large person commanding the attention of those in the whole area of Belgrade, Maine. Out of this has grown the family of Nancy Cowan. Nancy, back here. Dennis Linnell and Cheryl Kinney, here. Alfred Tremoon. Did I do it right? Okay. And Virgil Linnell. Oops, you're not quite yet. I've got to get to Warren before I can tell about you. Thank you. All right. And there are stories to be told about this family, too. I wish I had time enough to tell you about Samuel, the great-grandfather of Dennis and Cheryl and Althea, because we don't know his story, and I hope we know it sometime. We do know that he moved west at the time of the Civil War, that he changed his name from Linnell to Simmons for a while, and then back again, and that he met his end by being murdered in North Dakota. So it's an interesting story, and it would be wonderful to know it, the whole story sometime. Well, then there was Warren, another son of Samuel, who went to the Madison, Maine area, and he had a grandson, Eugene, who was very enthusiastic about the possibility of gaining gold in the far west. So Eugene went back and forth from Colorado, from Maine to Colorado to back again, and fortunately had a remarkable wife whose name was Sarah Osgood. Sarah Victoria Osgood, who was remarkable and kept the family together by teaching school and doing work in the resorts of Maine in the summertime while her husband went back and forth, trying to gain his wealth and win his way with the gold of Colorado, but I understand he did not succeed. But then there was Virgil, who's winning his gold by real estate in Portland. And fortunately, he's taking care of our gold in praying for the reunion. And we'll be hearing from him tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, go on with it, yeah.
Now we go back to page 5 and pick up there Samuel Linnell, who went to Grindstone Island. I love to tell the story of Samuel Linnell of Grindstone Island. It's possible that at one time Grindstone Island was actually named Linnell Island. It's in the St. Lawrence, just off of the coast of Watertown and Clayton. We visited there and tried to find Samuel's grave on the island, but we weren't able to, and finally discovered that he's buried on the mainland at Clayton Center, along with his wife, whose name was Hyannis Mosier. And her father was a privateer, commissioned privateer during the Revolutionary War, and plied his privateering up and down the coast of Maine during that period of time. Samuel, born in Barnstable, moved with the family to Belgrade, moved from there to Grindstone Island, fought in the War of 1812, was captured at Cape Vincent in that war, and taken prisoner by the British to Halifax, remained on shipboard in a prison ship where he almost starved to death during that period of the War of 1812, was moved by the British to Boston and released there, and then walked all the way from Boston back to home in Grindstone Island. An amazing kind of person. The story of the troubled times during the War of 1812 is another fascinating tale. The family farm on Grindstone Island went down through his daughter Sally, who married a Cummings, and was just sold from the Cummings family about 10 years ago, existing for 170 years through that line of the Linnell family, the Cummings family. But all of the rest of the family decided that Grindstone Island was no place for them, and they began their trek west. In fact, it's Samuel's line that is the largest line of Linnells, of descendants of Linnells that we have. It probably is no surprise to you, because if you have seen the number of pages in the book that register the descendants of Samuel, you know that they are like the sands of the seashore. It was Dick Linnell who helped me to gather a tremendous amount of this information. I should have been telling you who helped with all the rest of this too. I could report to you that Oral and Rita's sister Dorothy Johnson up in Maine sent a large amount of information. Larry and his family have gathered information about their section of Maine. Aunt Mary Linnell, our aunt, had done a whole volume about our family that we were able to use. Arthur Ellsworth Linnell's work that is found in the New England Historic and Genealogical Society in Boston provided us with all kinds of material that we were able to use and bind together our family. The Whitneys of Maine allowed us to use all of their material in doing the book. And if it sounds as if I didn't do anything but just kind of move it together, J.C. could tell you about the cemeteries that we visited and the times I went off to Chicago and heaven only knows where all, and Boston, in order to use all of the materials that we found there. Well, the Samuel Linnell descendants are a group that we need to identify by their children. On page 5, we have the John Linnell descendants through Hiram Samuel and Edward Hiram Linnell, Laura Linnell and Nina Townsend, Joan Wisner, Muriel Glader, Sandra Yoder, Ellsworth Townsend, and Tracy and Nikki. Good, they got it. And Carol Anderson, whoops, all right, thank you. And then there's also Judy Speldy and Jennifer Speldy, who are descended from Samuel Hiram, the son of Hiram Samuel, too. So that's this page that tells you about them. Then it was Chester John Linnell who moved to the area of Black River Falls after he left Beaver Island and the Mormon group up there, and came by way of William Ruby Linnell and Ray Linnell and Ruth Gilbertson to Richard Linnell, Dick, and Betty Nelson and Robert Gilbertson, and then Kurt and Jill, the grandchildren of Roberts, who are here too with us.
Page 6.
Page 6, that was. And then on to page 7, quickly. Samuel not only had these children, but he had Rufus. Rufus moved with a buggy, a wagon, and 3 horses from the upstate New York area through Ohio to Illinois. And it was there that through Joseph and Frederick we came to Robert, the husband of Mildred Linnell. Mildred is back here, Mildred. The mother of Marjorie, the mother of Bonnie, the mother of Linnell and Mitchell, and Linnell, the mother of Mark, our 5-generation family. Joseph had another child, Herbert, who through Wallace has brought to us Loie Long, Linda Baum, and Carol Peterson, back here. Then there was Clark Linnell, who through Gerald Linnell has brought us Yana and Tom. Here. Janet. All right, Janet. And then there was Seda Linnell. Have Judy Harms arrived? Oh, back here. All right, good. Janet, Auntie, and Judy Harms. And are any of your children here? Upstairs. All right. So we have, and your children are with you too. Sorry, 2 of your children here of Jonna's children, Jackie and Joanna. You're here too. So this family came in many different groups to many parts of our country and have come to join us today too. Then there was another Samuel Linnell who went to Wisconsin and who was the father of Lewis Thomas Linnell, whose Civil War records you will read in the scrapbooks in the scrapbooks in the family room, who was the father of Bird McPherson Linnell, a very well-known doctor of Chicago, who created a blood pressure taking device early on, very early in history.
7A.
7A, page 7A, thank you. And Ruth Burns, Linnell Burns, and Zenas Linnell are here from that family. And your children, Zenas, Julia, John, and Margaret are here too. Thank you. I simply have to say that it was a thrill to me to find this family because Zenas's and Ruth's mother, Julia Zenas, had a father, Dr. Zenas Linnell, who was my father's professor of church history at McCormick Seminary. It's just a remarkable thing when we begin to put the pieces together. Page 9, we're almost there. Page 9. Then there was another John Linnell, 1183, the son of John Linnell, whose grandson Abner Linnell became very excited about the Methodist denomination and provided us with a John Wesley Linnell, who had a John Wesley Linnell, and then there was another Robert Linnell, and then there was Jack Linnell. Jack, where are you? Okay. And then there was a Joseph Linnell, another one, who had a son and a son and a son and a son, and came down to Percy Linnell, and Percy had a grandson, John. John here tonight? Today. Not here. Okay. Percy had a son, Arthur, and a son, Clifton, and they had sons, Tom and Ted. Your children here? Tonight. All right, we'll introduce the mothers tonight then. Thank you. And they have lived in the area, mostly the Cape here, except for Tom, who fled to Colorado. Were you after that gold there too, Tom? And then there was another John. John had a son, Jabez Linnell, who came down to us with a Gail Linnell Smith, who we have just discovered. Gail, thank you. And then there's Melvin Linnell, who we wish we could put into the family. We're trying to find a connection yet, with his children, Jennifer, Christine, and Bruce, who are a Canadian connection, and we're trying to make the connection there through Canada. Melvin, Gail? Not here right now. Oh, I know, they're coming tonight. All right. So I've told you the story of our family. Here we all are, dear cousins, and I hope you're getting to know each other. so much. You know, you never know whether it's going to work or not when you do a lot of planning, but you're making it work because you're such wonderful people.
Which we will send to them. And they read, "Greetings and love from the First Linnell reunion at Cape Cod, Massachusetts. This greeting comes with extra special love to you from all of us attending the First Linnell reunion. You're a very special relative of ours, and we're taking this opportunity to tell you so. We salute you for who you are, for all you've given, and for your unique place in our Linnell family. We are sorry that you are unable to be with us today, but pleased to send you this special greeting, presented with love and admiration on this 25th day of June, 1988. Now, this one is particularly special to me because it's my grandmother. This is Pearl Houston Linnell at 96 years old, and receiving will be my father, Albert Linnell.
I've assembled your responses regarding the professions that you do into 15 categories of my choosing. I'd just like to run through them quickly. Among us, we number 19 educators, professors, teachers of various kinds, 13 homemakers. I guess it would be full-time homemakers. I imagine most of us are all part-time homemakers. 12 in medicine, that includes doctors, nurses, psychologists, psychotherapists. 10 in science and engineering. 6 in various trades, including rare metals manufacturing and electrician. 4 in what we'll call the arts, including art historian and book dealer. 4 in real estate. 4 in civil services and utilities, including police chief. 3 in law, including a judge and a lawyer. 3 in agriculture and fishing. 3 in the armed services. 2 in full-time church work, including, of course, a minister and another individual who's been involved in gospel work. 2 in media, as we call it, printing. 1 in hotel restaurant, and that includes ballroom dance owner and operator. That may be a good place for our next reunion. And then 22 in catch bags that are called business, which includes banking, landscaping, construction executive, and grocery store operator as well.
Books about the Linnells and the Sea, some of which Rachel used for her genealogy book. But it's an interesting story because, in fact, the Linnells have been not only a part of the Cape, but a part of the sea for generations and generations. Linnells were, like others on the Cape in the 17th and 18th century, involved in a variety of trades and occupations: farmers, blacksmiths, carpenters, craftsmen, and many other occupations. But many turned to the sea. Why? Among the reasons Rachel already mentioned, that the land, due to passing down from father to son, was split up into successively smaller and smaller properties, many of which were unsuitable to make a good family living. In many cases, the land became worn out. And frankly, the Cape's land is sandy soil, not always very suitable for agriculture. According to Rachel's research, in the census of 1850, fully half of the folks with the surname Linnell were involved in various occupations having to do with the sea, as mariners, captains, and fishermen, and crew members on these ships. But the ones that we know the most about were John Linnell, who was involved in the China trade from Boston and New York around to China in the clipper ship industry and the clipper ship Gen 2. He lived in Barley Neck in East Orleans and is buried in the Orleans Cemetery. But better known than John was Ebenezer Harding Linnell, who is the captain that brought us the Linnell house, where we'll be tomorrow, and was born in 1811, the third of 8 children. Eben was the child of Solomon Linnell of Easton, and Solomon himself was involved in the sea as the first keeper of the Orleans life-saving station. Now, Ebenezer Linnell was the captain of a number of ships before the clippers came along, such as the Cabinet, the Norman, and the Buena Vista. Due to his excellent speed and abilities on these ships, he was promoted to captain of the clipper ship Eagle Wing, which was launched in 1853 in Medford and was built by the James Curtis family. After fully fitting out the Eagle Wing in 1853, even left Boston on December 20th, 1853, headed for San Francisco. What an amazing adventure it must have been to be the captain of your own clipper ship. Unfortunately, just 4 days later, on Christmas Eve, even met a severe gale running out of the Boston area, and reported one of the worst storms he'd ever seen. He wrote in his log, "First part, threatening weather, short sail. At 4 p.m., close reefed topsails and furled courses. Hove ship to under close reefed mainsail and spencer. Ship lying with lee rail underwater, fully tipped over, nearly on beam ends. At 1:30 a.m., the fore and main topgallant masts went over the side. He lost the tops of his masts, blowing a perfect hurricane. At 8 a.m., moderating, the sea took away the jibboom and cap of the bowsprit, the front, the stick that goes in front of the ship. In 31 years of sea, I've never seen a typhoon or a hurricane so severe."
You've all heard now how we have been connected in the past and about where we come from and some of the things that we do. But in order to encourage you all to talk with each other about what you do now and who you are and what's of interest to you, someone has devised a little game. And I don't know who is responsible for that, but we'll just go on with this. As you leave, I think that's probably the best way to do it. We will have someone at the back exit and also at this exit, and we'll give each one of you a game card. And it simply asks 10 different questions, and in order to answer these questions, you have to talk to each other quite a lot. It asks questions such as, who here is a civil servant? Or who has carved in wood a perfect replica of the Liberty Bell? Now that's quite significant. I'd like to know that answer myself. So now, as you fill them out, you may give them to me whenever you can catch me, or to my husband, Chuck.
Here we are at the Tracer Museum.
This guy.
Uh-huh.
I guess the first thing I should tell you is why I'm here. As you can tell from your program and from my name tag, I'm Eric Linnell. I'm the youngest son of Earl Linnell, and you can see some of the pictures of that tribe over in the other room. It was considered, and I think very rightfully so, that it would be highly appropriate at this occasion to have a Robert Linnell make this presentation in memory of that first Robert Linnell. And so my brother Robert was asked, and he very kindly deferred to his little brother. And I appreciate that fact, because I really enjoyed the opportunity to be here and talk with you briefly tonight. Bob Linnell, he's from Fort Collins, Colorado. He's the son of Arthur and Margaret, and he grew up in Barnstable, so he knows this area pretty well. His wife is Sherry Moore, and both Tom and Sherry served for 6 years in the Peace Corps in Korea and Malaysia, so I think he's superbly equipped to talk with all of us and share things that we have experienced, because I'm sure you did a lot of sharing during that period of service. So I defer the podium to Tom.
All my teachers, we learned about Bradford and Lothrop and Standish. And one of my classmates was named Johnny Standish. Johnny could trace his roots back to Miles Standish. I thought Johnny was either royalty or next to God. Either one. I didn't know that I had roots. So today I went over to Route 6A and walked around the graveyard behind the old elementary school and drove up and down 6A and looked for where the first plots of land were that Robert must have owned. And it was just a whole different experience. It was wonderful. And I really just have to thank Rachel for opening that whole experience.
And the grandson of Al Linnell here in Massachusetts. He is going to play for us the third movement from Bach's A minor concerto. David and Hannah Linnell. I think at least some of you have read that story, and it certainly is a fascinating one. A story not only of their devotion to one another, but a story of the times and how harsh those times were. Dick is going to tell us that story by appearing in a first-person narrative, as if he is
the son of Robert Linnell. I, David, begot the third generation of Linnells in the Americas. My blood flows in all Linnell veins. When I first heard the notion that our life, Hannah's and mine, be called a 17th century love story, but I thought that someone was sporting us, and that I liked not. Upon reflection, a sudden will came over me to tell our story, Hannah's and mine, and the era in which that story takes place. So here am I, David, to give our colony. Life in 17th century England were far from life today, or the colonies whence Father brought the family in 1638, when I were a lad of 11 years. As I have tried to search my memory and mind for recollections of my English youth, I recall most vividly that our family were different. Father was a Puritan. I came to know that Puritans could be persecuted. Puritans could be jailed as nonconformists to the Church of England and were called separatists. Came to know that Puritans could be shunned by their English neighbors. I still recall Father's distress at the arrest, trial, and imprisonment of the Reverend John Lothrop and some 40 of his Puritan followers. When the Reverend Lothrop, a few years later, was banished from the British Isles, Father thought to accompany him, but Mother's illness prevented him from so doing. Following Mother's death, Father married Benaiah Howell. She were the sister of the Reverend Lothrop's wife. This marriage and continued persecution of Puritans in England favored Father's decision to join the Reverend Lothrop. When Father petitioned his London church for a letter of dismission to join Reverend Lothrop in America, I knew not why America, but I did do as my father said. It was several years before the full impact of this decision came clear to me. At that moment, a lad of 11, a journey, a sea voyage, why, this overshadowed all. The frenzy of activity in the planning and packing and the preparation involved many weeks. I still recall going aboard that ship with a tingling and an excitement that is still in me today. Once at sea, watching England fade into the haze, I began to get fear and apprehension, for we were at the mercy of the elements, the wind, the sea, the waves. The excitement of the voyage soon gave way. Life aboard ship were difficult. Conditions were crowded. There were illness and sickness, little food. Many did not survive and make the landfall. But Father's faith was strong. His prayers were answered, and our family, all of us, landed safely in the New World. We had survived. You know, I have tried to recall the name of the vessel that we sailed on, and its name does not come to me. The governor had been recording the names of all ships, but in the year of our arrival, 1638, some 20 vessels and over 3,000 individuals, and the governor could not keep up. Therefore, history has not recorded the name of that vessel, nor does its passenger recall it. I trust you will begrudge me not some lapse of memory. After all, 350 years is a far piece of time. Upon landing in the New World, we journeyed to Scituate to join the families of the Reverend Lothrop's church. Now, prior to our arrival, the Reverend Lothrop had petitioned the governor for more and better land on which to expand the colony. In the fall of 1639, we removed to the Cape, to the place that we named Barnstable. We set to work at once, working hard from first light of day to last light, for preparation for the harsh winter ahead. The Sabbath was holy. Work ceased. It was a day for worship, for prayer, for meditation, for reflection. But all were bid attend church. Even during the week, we opened our day with reading of Scripture. Our father leading, all of the family taking part. My formal schooling in America ceased except for this reading of Scripture. Reading was a virtue, and I could read and write. Now, the establishing of Barnstable was also the establishing of our church. For the church was the center of life and controlled the community. Father said that God had sifted the entire British nation to plant choice seeds in the wilderness. The question was, would we produce a people worthy of him? Even after arriving in the New World, we Puritans kept sifting our population, weeding out the weak stock. It came to be that over 2/3 of the population were debarred from church membership. But church members and non-church members alike were all expected to comply with the same moral code. That moral code was exact, demanding, and strict. Witness this. A sea captain comes home after 3 years at sea on the Sabbath. He meets his wife and family coming from church, greets his children, embraces and kisses his wife. For this act of public lewdness, said captain was brought before the magistrate and sentenced to 4 hours in the stocks. Barnstable was emerging as an important Cape Cod community. The freemen were concerned about the Indian uprisings and were looking to an armed defense of their community. Grave responsibility. On 27 September 1642, the freedmen of Barnstable met in assembly. Captain Miles Standish was chosen as commander of the forces to be led. 32 men enlisted. My father, Robert, was one. Oh, how I long to add my name to that list of those in defense of our community. The following year, 1643, when I was a lad of 16, I too could enlist in the defense of Barnstable. Now, at this time in our colony, our families needed to be the future of our community lay in its families, its churches, its homes. Early marriages were encouraged in the colonies. They built up the towns and the communities and gave it strength. Why then did I tarry until my 26th year to marry? First, there were few women. Our family had come in this large migration. From the year of my birth, 1627, until about 1640, some 21,000 came to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Yet, within a year of our arrival, that migration practically ceased. The woman I would marry would most likely be a native-born American-born. Besides, I had a desire and a need to help my father. The rigors of the passage to America, the building of a home in the wilderness, the change in occupation from London City to tilling the soil, all these were difficult for a man advancing beyond 60 years of age. And until such time that I felt that Father's home established, I continued to assist him. During my 24th year, I began to feel that Father's home was established and that I could shoulder the responsibility of a family. Also, Father depended on me quite strong, and his wife, my stepmother, begrudged my position in the household. And then there were Hannah. I had met Hannah Shelley. First we only met at church and we spoke. Eventually leading to speaking. We spoke only of home and family. I began to realize that Hannah was unhappy at home. Hannah's father was an easygoing man, devout Christian, hard-working, honest, but cared little how the world turned. Hannah's mother, Judith, was a proud woman. She had a tongue, it was said, that she could not control. It ran like a whipsaw, cutting everything it came in contact with. It seemed that Judith were slighted by some women of the congregation, and she took out her spite in slandering. Slandering not only the women, but Reverend Lothar. As a result of these vocal activities of Judith, she were debarred from church membership in June of 1649. This was the home that my Hannah grew up in. I suppose that Hannah's home life and mine with the stepmother perhaps drew us together. By 1652, Hannah, age 15, and I were becoming serious. Now, fair Hannah, she could have had her choice of suitors, but I prevailed. Methinks now, perhaps too strenuously, for we talked of marriage. We talked of the life we would have together, the family, our position in the community, what I could do with Hannah at my side. And then the blow to both of us. Hannah and I were summoned to appear before a meeting of the church. Now, our church leaders and our lawmakers had made an exhaustive list of prohibited carnal delights, such things as attending plays, of bowling on the green, of playing cards or dice or quoits, or kissing in public, unprofitable fowling, the use of tobacco, anything that may lead a true Puritan away from that path to heaven. And for those who strayed from that path, they felt the full force of the clergy and the magistrates. What was this law that Hannah and I had evoked? If anyone shall make motion of marriage to any man's daughter or maidservant without first having consent and leave of the parents or master so to do, shall be punished by fine or corporal punishment, or both, at the discretion of the bench. 30 May, 1652, a day I shall not forget. Hannah and I appeared before the entire congregation and confessed our fault. We were sent by joint consent of the church to be cut off from that relationship which we had had by virtue of our parents' covenant and debarred from church membership. In 1652, we had sinned. We had broken a law, committed a public fame. Yet, our fame had just begun. Court convened in Plymouth, and the two grand jurors from Barnstable were committed by duty to report of any violations of law or morals that had come to their attention. Thus, the court, on 3 June 1652, sentenced Hannah Shelley and David Linnell to be publicly whipped at Barnstable on 8 June 1652. 2 days I shall not forget. 30 May, 8 June 1652. We had been humiliated in the eyes of our fellow man. If any man, if anyone shall be guilty, the judge shall cause him to lie down. the judge shall cause him to lie down and be beaten before his face, according to his fault, by a given number. Deuteronomy 25, verse 2. We live by the Bible. Following the infamy of 8 June 1652, Hannah and I healed our body, our mind, our soul. It were a slow and painful process. But our love was strong. In the spring of 1653, Hannah and I posted our marriage vows. Now, marriage at this time was a civil affair. We clasped hands before Mr. Prince, the magistrate, on 9 March 1653, and were pronounced man and wife in a manner fitting colonial New England. Plain, simple, unadorned. There were no bridesmaids, no wedding dress, no wedding music, no music, no prayers. Plain, simple, unadorned. The Reverend Lothrop recorded this event. And thus started the wonderful life Hannah and I together. In 1655, we were blessed with our first son, Samuel. In 1657, I pledged my allegiance to the colony and the crown. I served on juries, I served in the Home Guards, and took my place as a freeman of Limestone. In 1658, our second child, Elijah, and in 1660, Hannah. In January of 1663, Robert Linnell, my father, at age 79, passed on. It's a great blow to me. A Puritan who had come to the colonies in 1638 as a man of 54 and lived another 25 years in colonial America, establishing a home and bringing the Linnell family name to this country. My vow to carry on that name and make it a respected one became stronger with the love, the understanding, the compassion, the sweetness, the gentleness of my Hannah. Together, we did. Our family continued to grow with the arrival of Mary, Aberdale, Experience, Jonathan, John, and finally Susanna in 1673. This family of 9 children begot Linnell, and Linnell descended numbering on to 50. Hannah lived to see all of her children marry and some 40 of her grandchildren. In 1679, I was chosen by my fellow townsmen, by my peers, to be Hayward of the general field and concerns thereof. The Linnells were accepted in Barton, accepted in the colony, and were accepted with a future. Life in the Puritan colony was changing. The religious fervor was slowing down. Our Puritan clergy, their sermons were mostly what we call jeremiads, or lamenting on the laxity of the youth. Our daughter Hannah, in 1681, was brought before the court for her light behavior with one Joseph Randall. She was fined 20 shillings and released. In 30 years, that harsh Puritan vision had been softened. Hannah and I continued to attend church, but we could not take communion. Our children were not baptized. Hannah accepted. I struggled with this. And prior to my death, in 1688, rejoined the church. The last years of my life were spent in comfort, in the glow of Hannah, my family, my home, my community. My legacy. Well, I had survived a 17th century civil war. Barment from church, public whipping and shame, marriage against the odds. Over 50 years in colonial America, with no blush about my name. I passed on at the age of 62 in 1889. My legacy, my family name, Linnell, was accepted in my adopted country. That I had reconciled with my church. That I had left sons to carry on the Linnell name. Father said that God had planted choice seeds in the wilderness. Father, word correct. Witness this gathering. My life in America was good. I wouldn't have changed any of it.
The picture goes appropriately dark. On Sunday morning, June 26th, all lights went out during an extended power shortage on Cape Cod. No video pictures remain of the continental breakfast or the ecumenical worship or the business meeting and closing ceremony. When power was restored, we were at the Captain Linnell restaurant for a farewell luncheon.
Do that if you'd like. Again?
So now, you want to get hooked.
There's another Linnell in the red purple over there.
Okay, I'll swing around here and catch everybody.
What a way to spend a reunion.
Well, it's kind of interesting, you know. You get to see everybody. Oh, thank you. Hello again.
Hello.
I don't even know if he knows this place.
Another shot of the duck. And he's hiding behind me now out of the wind.